We were taken to a peaceful river valley where a large herd of herbivorous dinosaurs lived together in harmony. Among them was a mother iguanodon who was carefully protecting her nest of eggs. One day, a playful baby dinosaur wandered too close to the nest, worried that he might accidentally damage the eggs. The mother quickly chased him away. The little dinosaur continued exploring and soon spotted a flying lizard-like creature. Curious, he began following it deep into the woods. Unfortunately, that part of the forest was home to a sleeping Carnotaurus, one of the most dangerous predators of its time. Suddenly, the giant carnivore woke up. The terrified baby dinosaur ran for his life, but the Carnotaurus followed him all the way back to the river valley where the herbivores live. Within seconds, panic spread through the herd as the massive predator launched an attack. Everyone scattered in different directions, desperately trying to escape. The mother iguanodon stayed behind, determined to protect her eggs. Carnotaurus charged straight through the nest, crushing it beneath its enormous feet. The herd eventually escaped, but one slower dinosaur couldn't keep up and became the predator's next meal. It seemed like everything had been lost, but unknown to everyone, one egg had survived. Soon, an opportunistic oviraptor discovered the egg and stole it, planning to eat it later. Before he could, another oviraptor appeared and tried to steal the prize for himself. The two scavengers began fighting, and during the struggle, the egg slipped away and fell into a river. The egg's journey was only beginning. A crocodile tried to crack it open, but the shell was surprisingly strong. Unable to break it, the crocodile spit it back out, allowing the egg to continue drifting downstream. After traveling a long distance, the egg caught the attention of a flying reptile known as a pterosaur. It grabbed the egg and carried it far across the ocean toward a remote island where it planned to feed it to its young. But before it could reach the nest, a flock of aggressive birds attacked. During the chaos, the egg slipped from the pterosaur's grasp and fell into the jungle below, landing in a giant tree inhabited by a colony of lemurs. The lemurs were immediately terrified by the strange object that had suddenly crashed into their home. Their elderly leader, Yar, ordered everyone to stay away because nobody knew what it was. However, his curious daughter Plio ignored the warning and cautiously approached the object. To her surprise, it was an egg, and it was hatching. Plio watched in amazement as a baby dinosaur slowly emerged from the shell. Excited, she called her father over to see it. Yar, however, was far less impressed. In fact, he was terrified. According to old stories, creatures from across the sea were dangerous monsters that ate meat and showed no mercy. Yar warned his family that if they raised the baby, it might grow up and eventually eat them all. Plio didn't believe that. She saw something completely different. She saw a helpless baby. Yar insisted that the creature should be thrown away before it became a threat. Plio refused and challenged her father to do it himself if he truly believed it was necessary. Reluctantly, Yar picked up the baby dinosaur and prepared to drop him from the tree. But when he looked into the little dinosaur's innocent eyes, he simply couldn't do it. The baby looked harmless, frightened, and completely dependent on others. Yar's heart softened. Instead of throwing him away, he handed the baby back to Plio. Overjoyed, Plio decided to raise him as part of the family. She named him Aladar and promised that she would teach him to live peacefully, just like the lemurs. Soon, every lemur on the island gathered around to meet the newcomer. None of them had ever seen a baby dinosaur before, making Aladar the center of attention. Years passed. Aladar grew into a strong young dinosaur, but despite his size, he still considered the lemurs his family. He spent his days playing, exploring, and having fun with his adopted brothers and sisters. For Aladar, the island was the only home he had ever known. One day, Plio approached him and reminded him about a special annual ceremony held on the island. Every year, the lemurs gathered to choose their lifelong mates. Following Plio's suggestion, Aladar went to find his brother Zini, who was busy practicing his moves on the beach, in hopes of impressing a future partner. Together, Aladar, Zini, and the rest of the lemurs headed toward a gigantic tree where the ceremony would take place. As the celebration began, one by one, every lemur found a partner and happily climbed into the tree together. Everyone seemed to find their perfect match, everyone except Zini. As the ceremony came to an end, Zini realized he was the only one left without a partner, and watching everyone else celebrate made him feel more alone than ever before. Seeing how disappointed Zini was, Aladar walked over and tried to cheer him up. He told him not to worry, because if he didn't find a mate this year, there was always next year. Zini quickly pretended that he didn't care and acted like it wasn't a big deal at all, but it was obvious he was hurt. Not wanting anyone to see it, he brushed off the conversation and walked away. A moment later, Plio joined Aladar. Looking around at all the happy couples, she smiled smiled and said that she wished there were more dinosaurs on the island. Maybe then Aladar could have found a partner too. Aladar smiled back and told her that he already had everything he needed. After all, he had a family that loved him. As Aladar and Plio continued talking, something strange suddenly caught their attention. Tiny glowing objects began falling from the sky. Everyone stared in confusion. Within moments, daylight started fading, and the sky grew unnaturally dark. What they were seeing wasn't a storm, it was an asteroid shower. Then disaster struck. A massive asteroid crashed into the ocean near the island, triggering an enormous explosion. Burning debris rained from the sky, setting the island ablaze. Panic spread instantly. Animals ran in every direction, desperately trying to survive. The impact unleashed a devastating shockwave that tore across the landscape, destroying everything in its path. Trees were ripped apart, the ground cracked open, and countless animals lost their lives. Aladar knew there was no time to waste. His only concern was saving his family. As the flames closed in behind them, Aladar led Plio, Yar, Zini, and the others toward the shoreline. But when they reached the edge of the island, they realized they had nowhere left to run. The firestorm was almost on top of them. With no other choice, Aladar leaped into the ocean, and his family followed. After struggling through the water, they finally reached safety. When they looked back, their home was gone. The beautiful island where they had spent their entire lives had been completely destroyed. Many of their friends and countless other animals had perished in the catastrophe. The loss was heartbreaking. Everything they had ever known had vanished in a single day. Now homeless and alone, Aladar and his family set out in search of a new place to live. After a long and exhausting journey, they eventually arrived in a rocky desert region. While exploring the area, Aladar spotted a small dinosaur and approached it, hoping to make contact. What he didn't realize was that it was a velociraptor. Before he could react, several more velociraptors emerged from the rocks and began surrounding them. The predators were hunting. Realizing the danger, Aladar quickly gathered his family and ran for their lives. During the chase, they suddenly came across a massive herd of herbivorous dinosaurs migrating across the wasteland. Seeing no other way to escape, Aladar and his family rushed into the herd and blended in with the crowd. The velociraptors eventually gave up the chase. A little later, the herd stopped to rest. Its leader, Kron, ordered everyone to settle down for the night before continuing the journey. While resting, Aladar met two elderly dinosaurs named Ima and Baleen. The three quickly became friends. Curious about where the herd was heading, Plio asked Ima about their destination. Ima explained that they were traveling to the nesting grounds, a beautiful paradise filled with water, food, and safety. It was the place where generations of dinosaurs had raised their young. The description sounded almost too good to be true. Later, Baleen admitted that she and Ima were getting old. The journey was becoming harder every day, and they no longer had the strength they once did. Aladar was surprised. If the older dinosaurs were struggling so much, why wasn't the herd slowing down? Just then, Kron walked past with his trusted Lieutenant Bruton and his sister Nira. Aladar decided to speak up. He respectfully suggested that the herd move at a slower pace because some of the elderly dinosaurs were having trouble keeping up. Kron wasn't interested in hearing it. He snapped back, telling Aladar to worry about himself and stay out of herd business. Then he walked away. Unlike her brother, Nira seemed much kinder. She apologized for Kron's behavior and explained that he was always tough on newcomers. Aladar appreciated her kindness, and before long, he found himself becoming quite fond of her. The next morning, Zini woke Aladar before sunrise. The entire herd was gathering together. Once everyone was assembled, Kron instructed Bruton to explain the rules to the newcomers. Bruton stepped forward and delivered a serious warning. He explained that they were crossing a barren wasteland with very little water. Anyone who fell behind would be left on their own, and if predators caught them, no one would come back to help. The only way to survive was to keep moving, so the migration resumed. Day after day, the herd marched across the unforgiving landscape without stopping. The journey was brutal. Food was scarce. Water was even scarcer. Many young and weaker dinosaurs couldn't survive the harsh conditions. Those that collapsed were quickly picked off by the velociraptors, stalking the herd from a distance. As the days passed, Ima became increasingly exhausted. At one point, she nearly gave up and refused to go any farther, but Aladar wouldn't let her quit. He encouraged her, supported her, and helped her continue moving forward. Meanwhile, the velociraptors were feeding on one of the dinosaurs that had died during the migration when something much more dangerous appeared. Two gigantic carnotauruses emerged from the wasteland. The velociraptors immediately scattered. Even they knew better than to challenge these massive predators. The carnotauruses ignored the smaller hunters and turned their attention toward the migrating herd. They had found a much bigger target, and from that moment on, the deadly predators began following the herd, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Eventually, Kron and Bruton reached a watering hole that the herd had been counting on for days. But when they arrived, they discovered something terrible. The entire lake had dried up. Not a single drop of water remained. Kron was frustrated, but instead of stopping to help the exhausted herd, he immediately ordered everyone to keep moving toward the nesting grounds. The problem was that many dinosaurs could barely stand anymore. They had spent days crossing the wasteland with almost no food or water. Ima, Baleen, and several others desperately needed rest. Even Nira disagreed with her brother. She warned Kron that if they continued without water, half the herd could die before reaching their destination. He coldly replied that losing half the herd was acceptable, as long as the other half survived. His priority wasn't protecting the herd, he only cared about reaching the nesting grounds as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Ima and Baleen wandered into the dried-up lake bed. Ima sadly explained that every migration she had ever made included a stop at this very lake. Years ago, it had always been full of fresh water. As Baleen stepped onto the cracked ground, Aladar and Zini suddenly heard something unusual. It sounded like water flowing beneath the surface. Curious, they started digging. To everyone's surprise, water burst through the dirt. There was still an underground spring hidden below the lake. The group cheered with excitement. After days of suffering, they finally had water. Ima, Baleen, and the others eagerly drank their fill. Aladar then called the rest of the herd over to share the discovery, but Kron immediately pushed everyone aside and rushed to the water first, making sure he drank before anyone else. Only after he was finished did the rest of the herd get their turn. At the same time, Bruton and another dinosaur had traveled ahead, looking for additional water sources. Unfortunately, the two Carnotauruses spotted them. The predators attacked without warning. Back at the lake, a dinosaur named Suri was caring for two frightened hatchlings, hiding inside a cave. When Aladar learned they were thirsty, he brought the babies to the dried lake bed and showed them how to reach the underground water. Watching him help the young dinosaurs impressed Nira even more. She walked over to join him, and Aladar taught her how to find water beneath the ground. The two spent time working together and quickly grew closer. Their friendship was becoming something more. Not long afterward, Bruton finally returned to the herd. He was badly injured. Everyone immediately knew something was wrong. Bruton informed Kron that the Carnotauruses had attacked him and were now following their trail. The giant predators were heading straight toward the herd. Instead of showing concern, Kron became furious. He blamed Bruton for leading the Carnotauruses to them and ordered the herd to leave immediately. Confused by the sudden decision, Nira asked what was happening. Kron explained that the Carnotauruses could arrive at any moment. As panic began spreading through the herd, Aladar stepped forward. He pointed out that many dinosaurs weren't strong enough to keep up with a forced march. If they rushed ahead, the weaker members would be left behind and become easy prey. Aladar believed the herd should stay together. If they worked as a team, they would have a much better chance of surviving. But Kron refused to listen. As usual, he chose speed over compassion. When Aladar tried convincing the herd to stay united, Kron lost his temper. The two dinosaurs argued, and the confrontation quickly turned physical. Kron slammed Aladar to the ground in front of everyone. Then he ordered the herd to move out. With Nira and the rest of the dinosaurs following him, Kron continued the migration. Aladar was left behind. Staying with him were Ima, Baleen, his lemur family, and the other dinosaurs who simply couldn't keep up. As Aladar helped the slower dinosaurs continue their journey, they suddenly heard movement nearby. Everyone froze. For a moment, they thought the Carnotauruses had found them, but when Aladar investigated, he discovered it was Bruton. His injuries had become too severe, and he had fallen behind the herd. Despite the way Bruton had treated him before, Aladar immediately offered to help. Bruton wasn't interested. He bitterly told Aladar to stay away and insisted that he didn't need anyone's sympathy. He only wanted to rest. Respecting his wishes, Aladar continued moving with the others. Soon, dark clouds gathered overhead. For the first time in a long while, rain began falling across the wasteland. The group took shelter inside a nearby cave. Hours later, Bruton also arrived at the cave entrance. He was barely able to walk. Even then, he hesitated to come inside. Seeing his condition, Aladar helped him enter the cave and find a safe place to rest. Cleo noticed how badly he was injured and gave him some medicinal herbs she had collected. She explained that they might help him recover faster. As Bruton looked around at the exhausted group, he asked Cleo a question. Why was Aladar giving everyone false hope? How could he honestly believe they would ever reach the nesting grounds? Cleo smiled. Then she gave a simple answer. Hope was the reason they had made it this far in the first place. Without hope, they would have given up long ago. For the first time, Bruton quietly accepted the herbs. That night, while everyone slept, Aladar suddenly heard strange sounds echoing outside the cave. Heavy footsteps, low growls. The sound was getting closer, much closer. The Carnotauruses had finally caught up. Bruton quietly warned Aladar that everyone needed to stay calm. According to him, the rainwater and damp air inside the cave would make it harder for the Carnotauruses to track their scent. Keeping as quiet as possible, the group slowly moved deeper into the cave. For a moment, it seemed like they might escape unnoticed, but then disaster struck. A loose rock suddenly fell and crashed onto the cave floor. The noise echoed through the cavern. The Carnotauruses immediately realized they weren't alone. Within seconds, the giant predators charged into the cave and attacked. One of them lunged at Aladar and nearly dragged him away. At the last second, Bruton threw himself into danger and saved him. He ordered Aladar to take everyone deeper into the cave while he held the predators back. Bruton knew he couldn't defeat two Carnotauruses by himself, so he made a sacrifice. He slammed his body into the cave wall, causing a massive rock slide. Huge boulders came crashing down from above. The falling rocks buried Bruton and both Carnotauruses beneath tons of stone. When the dust settled, Aladar rushed back and desperately tried to dig Bruton out. But it was too late. Bruton had given his life to save everyone else. The group mourned the loss of a dinosaur who had finally learned the value of compassion and teamwork. Suddenly, the rocks began moving. To everyone's shock, one of the Carnotauruses was still alive. Badly injured but not defeated, the predator struggled free and limped away into the darkness. Knowing they couldn't stay there, Aladar led the group farther through the cave system. After traveling for some time, they reached what looked like a dead end. The path ahead was completely blocked. Everyone's hope began fading. Then Zini noticed something unusual. He pulled a small rock from the wall. A beam of sunlight immediately shined through the opening. The group couldn't believe it. There was open sky on the other side. Excited, everyone worked together to break through the rock barrier. Moments later, the wall finally collapsed, and what they saw left them speechless. Beyond the cave was a breathtaking paradise, a flowing river, lush green forests, fresh vegetation everywhere. They had finally found the nesting grounds, the legendary destination every migrating dinosaur had been searching for. Overjoyed, Baleen rushed straight into the river and happily drank as much water as she could. Meanwhile, Ima noticed something strange. A massive mountain now stood where the old migration route used to be. The asteroid impact had completely reshaped the landscape. When Aladar realized what that meant, his excitement disappeared. If the old route was blocked, Kron and the rest of the herd would never make it through. Worse yet, the surviving Carnotaurus was still out there. The herd could walk right into danger. Without hesitation, Aladar decided to go back and warn them, even though it meant risking his own life. Making his way toward the cave entrance, Aladar spotted the surviving Carnotaurus roaming nearby. He quickly hid behind the rocks and waited for the right moment. Meanwhile, Kron, Nira, and the herd finally reached the mountain. When Kron saw that the old passage was blocked, he ordered everyone to climb over the mountain instead. Nira immediately objected. There were elderly dinosaurs, hatchlings, and injured members of the herd who would never survive such a climb. But Kron refused to listen. As always, he demanded that everyone follow his orders. Just then, Aladar arrived. He warned the herd that a Carnotaurus was nearby and told them he had discovered another route, a safe route, a route that led directly to the nesting grounds. The herd immediately trusted him. One by one, they began following Aladar. Kron was furious. His authority was slipping away. Enraged, he confronted Aladar, and the two dinosaurs began fighting. During the struggle, Kron managed to injure Aladar and prepared to finish him off. But Nira finally stepped in. She realized that her brother's pride and stubbornness were putting everyone in danger. Choosing what was right over family loyalty, she stood beside Aladar and joined the herd. At that exact moment, the surviving Carnotaurus appeared. Panic spread instantly. Instead of helping the herd, Kron tried climbing the mountain alone. Aladar, however, refused to run. He told everyone to stand together. If they stayed united, they had a chance. As the Carnotaurus advanced, the entire herd moved forward as one. The predator suddenly found itself facing dozens of dinosaurs instead of helpless prey. For the first time, it hesitated. Then it noticed Kron climbing by himself. Seeing an easier target, the Carnotaurus charged toward him. Within moments, Kron was attacked and badly wounded. Even after everything that had happened, Aladar and Nira rushed to save him. Together, they confronted the giant predator. A fierce battle followed. Using everything he had learned throughout the journey, Aladar managed to outsmart the Carnotaurus and force it over the edge of a cliff. The massive predator plunged to its death. The threat was finally over, but Kron's injuries were too severe. Before long, he passed away. Nira was heartbroken to lose her brother, despite all of his mistakes. Afterward, Aladar guided the herd through the cave and safely into the nesting grounds. For the first time since the asteroid disaster, everyone had food, water, safety, and hope for the future. Their long journey was finally over. A few months later, life had completely changed. The nesting grounds were thriving with new life. Aladar and Nira had started a family of their own, and one day their egg finally hatched. Surrounded by friends and family, they proudly welcomed their newborn child into the world. Even Zini finally found the partner he had always dreamed of. After all the loss, danger, and sacrifice, the survivors had built a new beginning together. And with that heartwarming moment, the story of Dinosaur came to a happy ending.